everyone, and welcome. This is episode 301 of Milwaukee's Tailgate Brewers podcast, part of the MKE Tailgate Network. I am James, joined once again by a very happy Ryan and Paul after the Packers just stomped the Bears. Very nice to see you, Paul.
Especially Paul, because I have to go to the office tomorrow, and I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a good old time, and I don't know. Things could have gone maybe a little tiny bit better, but really, that's about as good as you could possibly have expected from this game. It was fantastic. Just well done across the board.
Yeah, the only thing that would have made that any better was just like an absolute bombshell Jordan game where it was like 6 touchdowns and 350 yards and like just absolute and utter perfection. Because there are some things you could nitpick about it, though. So I had to ask you this, Paul. So How significant, because I was looking at this, his yards per completion was 9.1, rounds up to 9.1. And last year, the leader in the league was Tua at 8.9.
Yeah.
So how significant is this given some of the runs were like screen passes and whatever? Do we just sort of average that out? How does that actually work in terms of trying to figure out the significance?
We have ADOT, and depth of target is the dot part. Average depth of target. There we go. And his was like 10.2 in this game, which is very good. There were screens, of course, but he was slinging it downfield a good amount of the time. So he was trying to hit guys down the field, which is especially good to see without Watson. Like they were missing their best downfield threat. And I know what sticks in my head too is like all the little stupid Devontae bubble screens and stuff. But like he had Jaden Reed down the field a couple times on pretty big throws. That Toure third down completion was like a 13-yard ADOT. Obviously the Musgrave one boosts it a lot, but that was a well-designed play that he recovered after dropping the ball, and you deserve all those points for making that happen. So this was not a check down game at all. He was pretty aggressive with it, and it was very much a Jordan Love game, which I think is pretty encouraging. I think he made pretty much all the right reads. He's a little bit inaccurate, and that shows up in his completion percentage. But by and large, if he runs the offense like this, they should be perfectly good. Like this is very good to see. It's maybe not even a good Jordan Love game. There's probably going to be games where he connects at a higher rate and they look even better than this. I'm sure he'll have some stinkers too, but that is what it is.
But we do need to see this against an NFL team first, right?
We do. It's triple A
these
here.
preseason games. Yeah, come on.
Yeah, we need
real competition.
We need a real NFL squad.
I still don't. So like I got talked up on the Bears a little bit after going on some podcasts and talking to some Chicago people. They did make some good like incremental upgrades over the offseason. But like it just comes down to Justin Fields is terrible, and there's still a ton of holes in their secondary. So like what are you gonna do with that? That's just a bad football team when you have those
win
problems.
5 games.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. All right, we'll save the rest of the Packers talk for reporting as eligible, so you guys have something to talk about in a couple of days here. But definitely looking forward to that. The vibes are good there. Vibes less good for the Brewers on Sunday, but luckily a lot of people are probably distracted. But we'll talk about all of that coming up in a second here. But first of all, a reminder, you get question priority when you're a patron with us, both here on this podcast and on Reporting as Eligible. So just go to patreon.com/MKE tailgate. $2 a month gets you that question priority on both podcasts. $5 a month gets you that perk plus the additional exclusive content, including the Minor League Extra with Ryan and James Anderson from RotoWire, as well as Paul's Reporting as Eligible mini pods. And I'll just say this here because Steve gave this critique last week. You can support us another way. Go to Apple Podcasts, hit subscribe, follow us there, give us a 5-star review. And, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever else, you can also follow us on YouTube now at MKE Tailgate there. So shout out to Steve. Rightly pointing out that none of you listened to the end of this podcast, so you're probably going to miss that. So we'll just put that right up front there.
I mean, I have looked at the minute by minute. You can do that on here. And people do generally listen to the end of the podcast. Like they generally make it to the end. Not everybody, but generally.
Yeah, but it's like, oh, James is doing the goodbye spiel. I can hit pause on this and not listen to this crap. So conned you into it this time. Sorry. All right. The Brewers almost threw a combined no-hitter on Sunday. They held the Yankees hitless for more than 10 innings, notably. So I think they had said it would have been like the longest combined no-hitter ever if they had pulled it off. But
Yay.
they did not.
Mhm.
Ghost Runner did, in fact, come back to bite them a little bit. They gave up a run there, but they ultimately built a 3-1 lead. Look good. Andrew Chafin, apparently the only arm left to throw at that point in the 13th inning, and he promptly hung a slider to Giancarlo Stanton, who just murders lefties in general. So I don't know if Craig was just saying, screw it, let's go home or what, but they eventually lost in sorry, that was the 12th inning. They lost in 13, 4-3. So, we drifted off towards the end there. Once they lost the no-hitter, and it seemed pretty clear they're just going to lose. I was kind of resigned to it, but there's plenty of people out there that are really upset about the Brewers losing this game. They were, if we're being fair, facing Garrett Cole, who is also excellent for 7 innings, or 7 innings, yes.
No, he was 7, Burns was 8.
Burns was 8, right? But doesn't really excuse the inability to get the Ghost Runner in several innings there and extras and come away with a win. So I guess if there's good news, this still ended up being a pretty successful week for the Brewers, even though they again split 3-3. They dropped 2 out of 3 in Pittsburgh before taking 2 and 3 from the Yankees. But, we saw that NL Central lead dropped to as little as a game and a half in this past week. But now they're still back up to a 3-game lead in the Central, thanks to the Arizona Diamondbacks. So thank you, Arizona, for that. Notably, Brewers have 20 left to play, but the Cubs only have 18 left to play. And they're effectively 4 games back in the loss column. So there is that to note as well. All of that said, I had this question in here before we got an onslaught of questions about it. But Paul, if the Brewers had thrown a no-hitter at Yankee Stadium on a Packers-Bears game day, how many people would have actually noticed?
There were not a lot of social media updates on that as it was happening compared to the football going on. So not enough people would have noticed, that's for sure. And I was like, I've had a bad record lately of jinxing things, so I actually decided to keep my mouth shut personally about it, which maybe prevented me from seeing it. But it was flying under the radar. I think it was going to be just a very a missed gem for a lot of people. And 10 years down the line, you have I remember when the Packers won with Jordan Love and the Brewers didn't know. You'd have a lot of that nonsense, like how everybody was at Woodstock and crap like that. But I just don't think a lot of people saw this game. I don't. I didn't. I was at soccer tournaments and doing other things for most of it.
Well, you also had the fact that it started late due to weather. So,
that's true. The timing got all messed up too. I forgot about that.
So people that were tuning in, which I did, I tuned in on time and then saw that there was a weather delay. And then I forgot to come back to it until the 2nd inning. So when I actually made it back, it was the 2nd inning of the game because I had just turned on some NFL and was just sitting there doing nothing. And so I completely missed that. And I will cop to the fact that I switched over to the Packer game when it started and then had the Brewer game up on my iPad, which was being malfunctioning. I don't know if other people have this issue, but ever since I got and am getting games now through the Bally Sports app, the Bally's app on especially iPad is garbage.
It's the worst.
Yeah,
it's the worst.
It's absolutely
never been
trash.
good.
That's
okay.
right.
Yeah.
I'm not the only one. Thank God. Okay, that sucked. It was terrible.
It's a sling box in a cabinet somewhere with S connectors hooked up to it. That is how that thing works.
Well, I can't even get I'm sitting there pounding my iPad trying to get it to click, and it will not even click.
Nope.
Yep. And it's just, the app itself is faulty. So anyway, that's really stupid. Fix your, well, I guess they're going to be out anyway. So whatever.
They don't have the money to fix it. Yeah, they fired everybody.
Yeah,
so.
They're just about done anyway. So, okay, we can move on from that. But yeah, this was a tough one that way. But I got to say, the combined no-hitter thing does nothing for me. Really, basically nothing. I go, oh yeah, okay, that's cool. It's fine. But I mean, no hitters. I've ever since I became an effectively wild person, it's really much more the perfect game. I will get a perfect game is legit exciting. A no hitter is just kind of. I mean, in this game, Burns was really really good. So the walks that he had were kind of Angel Hernandez-y, and he was really really strong. So this wouldn't have been one of those weak ass terrible no hitters. What was the AJ Burnett one famously, or whoever the guy was who walked
Edwin
8.
Jackson too. Edwin Jackson walked 8. I think
Yeah.
AJ Burnett had one that was like that too, 6
Yeah.
walks or something.
Yeah, this wasn't that. This was a pretty dominant performance. But as soon as it starts to get into the bullpen, I'm like, okay. I just don't even get really like amped up about that. And also in the buildup for it, you lose something because you're looking at the pitch count and you know Corbin Burns isn't finishing this game. So you look at it and you're like, there's no way. And then I really didn't think he was even going to come out for the 8th after he ended the 7 with the sprained ankle. And then
we had guys like killing each other trying to save this thing too, between Burns and then Frelick just elbowing Weimer in the face like an old school NBA post player. Like that was nuts too.
I still think this was close enough to a real no-hitter that it warranted some excitement. And a 10-inning no-hitter is exciting.
Yeah,
potentially the longest
thing.
no-hitter of all time is also exciting. Like that, that's a thing that only happens once until it's broken the next time. So I feel like this warranted attention. It wasn't like the last Brewer no-hitter where like 10 guys pitched or whatever.
Oh no, the last one was just Burns and then Hader.
Burns and a Hader.
Was that what it? Okay.
Yeah, that was Burns and Hader. That was on. They were almost because that was on 9/11, right? That was on 9/11/2021. So this would have been almost
nuts.
2 years to the day. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think, Paul, there probably have been some where they were deep in the game in like a bullpen game, and then finally a reliever gave something up. And that's definitely less exciting. But yeah, I'm with you. I was going to say the 10-inning aspect or even the 11-inning aspect of it would have been just wild to see. But I do think it flew under the radar because I saw people posting that like ESPN didn't even send out a push alert for it until like after the 7th inning or something like that, which I guess maybe you could argue is kind of, a no-hitter might happen territory, but he was carving up the Yankees the entire time. You would have thought it would have gotten more attention, but no, of course.
It was NFL opening Sunday. Yeah.
Yes. The noon slate of NFL opening Sunday. So I get it. But that led to my question. But clearly, plenty of our patrons were paying attention. We got lots of questions about this game. So let's just jump right in with Tom Haight, who is asking, does losing a game when you had 10 no-hit innings immediately join the pantheon of an infuriating Wisconsin sports teams' losses? Also, Andrew Chafin can knock off the Wisconsin man shtick. We already figured out he's bad. So I guess, Ryan, let's start with you. Is this one of the more infuriating Brewers losses you can remember, or is it just kind of like a side fact that they had a no-hitter and they lost the game?
Yeah, it is kind of a side factor. And the fact that they'd won the first 2 games, the vibes were pretty good, and Burns was absolutely dominant throughout the whole thing. Like I guess I was happy to see things go as well as they did, and it didn't really freak me out. The Chafin thing, we have more on Chafin later, so I'll leave the Chafin stuff to later, but like, yeah, this one just kind of left me whatever, and I'm sure it also helped that I was able to just like immediately go, okay, let's watch the Packers now, and like move right on to that, and that was going relatively well, and then went really, really well later. So yeah, that didn't hurt things anyway.
Yeah, hard disagree.
Oh wow, okay.
Well, so in terms of stakes, it wasn't that big a deal. It's another loss. It's a little bit of a bigger deal because it does drain your staff a little bit. Not terrible. Timing could have been worse, honestly. But just aesthetically, it's just horrible. Like it's one thing to like blow the no-hitter late, but to go and to have a 3-1 lead and you had your 10-inning no-hitter and everything's wrapped up in a nice little package, and then you go and just fart that away with like running out of pitchers. That's annoying. Like you should have been able to have this be like, oh, everybody remember when that happened, and instead it just like is a bunch of garbage. So yeah, it's bad. Yes, it didn't matter that much in the grand scheme of things, but like finish your gem of a game, please. Don't go and fart it away. It's annoying.
I guess when you only have like 2 no-hitters in team history, it does sting a little bit more when you lose that game, right? Yeah. All right. Well, Luke Roy's Suitcase is asking, how does today's pitching effort compare to previous Brewers all-time pitching performances? Where would you rank it? So, Paul, I know you said you're not a huge fan of combined no-hitters, but this one was kind of just a weird novelty act. So I
Yeah.
guess where does that rank?
Pretty high. The last Burns no hitter is probably. I mean, first of all, it happened, so that's a big plus.
They won that game, yes.
But like, I think this is probably better than the Nieves no hitter was, which was not a well pitched game, and yes, it did happen, but it was kind of ugly, and it didn't go 10 innings, and like I actually like this is like probably a top 5 like game scorey type thing, I would say. Sheets strikeouts better, a couple no hitters, but like it's really good. It's really well done.
Yeah, this one doesn't seem like it's going to stand out to me. I'm trying to think of other big Corbin Burns. Obviously, I'll think of the no-hitter that he had with Hader, the combined one in 2021. And I'll think of kind of the ups and downs of that 2019 season where he would be like really, really, he was like striking out like 10 guys, 10 of the first 11 batters, and then gives up like 3 home runs and gets knocked out. Like, I'll think of those sorts of things from Corbin Burns before I would remember back to something like this. And definitely, like, it's not up there with the best of Ben Sheets or the best of CC Sabathia. It doesn't compare to those things. So I don't know. Like, even like the best, like, I'll always remember the Yovani Gallardo where he what was it? He went 10 complete and won the game with a home run, or was it 9 innings that he won the game with a home run?
I think it was 9.
Right?
I think it was 9.
Probably 9 innings.
Like
no,
those sorts of things I will remember over this, which was just kind of a weird. I mean, it was also there was the Angel Hernandez of it all. Like Angel had a massive, massive strike zone, so. Like Garrett Cole also looked really good because I think if you were a halfway decent pitcher, you would have looked really good today because Angel wanted the hell out of there as quick as possible, which
that's fair.
That's actually kind of the nice thing about this is Angel had to ump 13 innings because of the way he called the game. Well, 14 innings, sorry. He had to go 4 extra innings. So he had to go 13 innings because of the very like cynical way he was calling this game, which was it seemed to be very, very big when there was nobody on base. And then when anybody would get on base, like the zone would tighten up so that somebody would score. And it just like didn't happen. Well, first off, the Yankees weren't putting anybody on base. So they were having trouble doing that at all. But when the Brewers would get guys on, like the zone did seem to shrink a little bit in those early innings. So, just like, I don't know. It's not, I feel like this one is going to be out the memory hole in a very short period of time.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those where they needed to finish the job for it to be memorable, right? Otherwise, there'll be something that we're talking about 3 years from now and be like, remember the time that they went into the 11th or 12th no hit and can't remember all the details? I don't know.
And also today, I was looking at this. So normally going to Yankee Stadium and like no hitting or, potentially like putting a perfect game on the vaunted Yankees would be a big deal. The Yankees offense sucks. Like it is a bad offense.
Yeah. It's bad. Yeah.
And it's like the worst offense they've had in my lifetime of being, or my adult lifetime of remembering the Yankees. I don't remember the bad Yankees teams of the early 90s. I know they were there, but I don't have any real memory of them. As a person who is following baseball on a somewhat adult level, I don't remember the Yankees ever being this bad. So, yeah.
And on top of that, they had just gotten the news probably behind the scenes that Jason Dominguez tore his UCL and probably needs Tommy John. So there might have been a malaise over the club today, too, because they announced that after the game as well. But still.
I mean, that dude will be back like first thing in the spring, if not like DHing at least, or relatively soon into next season, and then playing right field or wherever he's going to play after that. I guess Judge is in right. So wherever Dominguez is going to play, he'll be out there playing it relatively soon into next season. It'll be fine. But
it was just the fact that he was like the lone exciting aspect of the season now for them at this point, and now it's all gone too. Speaking of being all gone, like the Brewers lead when Andrew Chafin comes in, Bob Peterson is asking, can we please move on from Chafin now? Follow up, why not replace him with Gosser or have another left-hander in the bullpen? He can also eat up innings if needed. So I guess, Ryan, is this Andrew Chafin's last stand? I feel like we ask this after every single blow up here, but he'll scatter in a 0 every once in a while to stay on the roster.
Well, yeah, his last 3 outings, he had been good. And so he hadn't given up a run. I think he'd been almost perfect through that run. Like he was doing a very good job through that run and wasn't really allowing much of anything. And then this came along, and I went back and I looked actually pitch by pitch. He threw one bad pitch. I mean, he hung one to Giancarlo Stanton, and he didn't miss it, and he just tied the game because of the Manfred runner being there. It happened to tie the game. Now the Brewers were up 2 because of the Manfred runner, obviously, also. So fair is fair, but this was kind of one of those situations where you're gonna occasionally give up a bad pitch, and he hung one and it got punished, and that's part of playing baseball too. So I don't think that this is like Andrew Chafin when we first got him bad. He was walking a lot of people, and then when he was forced to come into the strike zone, he was getting tanked. This was a 1-2 pitch that he missed up. He just put it in a spot where he could tee off, and he teed off, and it was that. This was not like what he looked like early on in his tenure with the Brewers. So I don't think there's any particular need to move on from him, and I don't know that Gosser would be better than him. So I don't see the pressing need to do it. And we talked about it a little bit last week too, like the Colin Ray situation. Ray has now put up 2 very cromulent starts for them in the time that he's been back into the rotation. He hasn't gone deep, but they haven't really needed him to go deep because they can cover for it with the extra man in the bullpen. And so I think we're probably something drastic would have to happen at this point for us to see Robert Gosser. I think he's a 2024 thing now, not a 2023 thing.
Yeah, I still wouldn't mind checking him out for upside, and Chafin's not helpful. He's just a guy I would rather check out a up and comer, but wasn't a good performance. So, but they'll probably stick with him for a bit. They aren't going to cut bait that easily, would be my guess. So we'll see.
I don't know. There's always the chance that he gets Brian Anderson and then
who knows
for 3 weeks.
Maybe he did whatever
Brian.
We just need the rest of the Brewers to get together and frame him for whatever Brian Anderson did. I'll take care of that.
Yeah, more on that later. All right,
that's coming.
More Patreon questions. Of a happier note, PJ Wessels asking, okay, show of hands for who didn't feel great about the division lead after Thursday and now feels better about it. Raise his hand, PJ says. Ryan raised his hand. Paul raised his hand. I'm describing things because this is an audio medium. Also, Brewers can't clinch the division this week, so how can we best not worry about every single game? So, Paul, 20 games left. Things kind of tend to have outsized meaning when we get down to this stretch, but as I mentioned, 3-game lead kind of can help calm some nerves, right?
Yeah, and it's things change so quickly. The Cubs just looked dynamite there for quite a while before they got to Arizona, and just lost a couple of heartbreakers for them, and things just turned themselves right back to where they were, and now they have to make up all that margin they lost again. It's one of the benefits of having a lead, there's still, I think, a very good team, and it's still kind of a scary team, but they just don't seem to be able to get over the hump either. So yay for that. The other good thing about the Brewers that they now have going for them is they've just finished their second last road trip of the season. They're home for the entire rest of the season, except for 6 games in the middle of it. So that's good. I feel like travel wears on them a little bit. The Cubs are on the road significantly more than the Brewers are. They are about to start a 6-game road trip, and they finish with a 6-game road trip. They're only at Wrigley for 6 more games total this season. So also a big plus. So you've got that going for you. But the Brewers have been feisty. Like whenever they get down, they have been able to reclaim that lead and keep it at a comfortable distance. And I will still be freaking out if it's not 4 games for that last Cubs series. But
yep.
But they've done their part so far. So hopefully they just keep it up and keep rolling and doing what they're doing and don't freak out and have one of their stupid streaks where they don't score any runs for 2 straight weeks. But they're in a good place. It's set up well for them. The Cubs have Atlanta too. Like there's some garbage too, but they have Arizona again and they have Atlanta, and so it's not an easy schedule for them.
Yeah, though by that point Atlanta probably has everything sewn up, so they may not be really trying.
They
We
might
talked
not
about
be
that a
trying
little
that
bit
hard.
this-
They're so deep though. Like they can only tank so hard. Like
right.
even Atlanta backups are pretty darn good.
Yeah, there's that. By the way, yes, to your point, the Cubs hadn't lost a series in over a month.
Yeah, they've been
So-
just murdering people.
Yeah, so finally getting beat and taking some bad losses to the Snakes, that really was nice because the Brewers were able to make up ground. I know Steve mentioned this was like, it was really nice to make up ground on the Cubs while we're not even playing. Or was it you, James, that said that?
Yeah, a couple people noted that. Yeah, the Brewers had picked up a full game on the Cubs before they had even played Friday night in New York, so that was definitely nice.
Yeah, from the time they had last played on Wednesday
Yep.
to the time that, they had picked up a full game on the Cubs because of just the Cubs losing a couple. So that is useful and that is helpful. And the loss column thing does help as well. Like the Cubs are further behind that way, so that does matter. I know we could get into a whole loss win column thing, but yeah, they're yes. It's always nice when they're behind whatever they're behind. So yeah, we'll take that. But yeah, this is really at this point, you're just trying to go through and win series. If you can win series, it doesn't need to be pretty. It doesn't need to be exceptional. You're gonna come out ahead in this thing. They have such a big lead now on the playoffs in general that even if they were to somehow fall behind the Cubs, they would still, very likely end up in the playoffs at this point. Their playoff percentage is, according to...
It was like 99.1.
It's pretty high.
It was 99.1. It's now 98.6, according to Fangraphs, and Prospectus hasn't updated since the 7th. So Jonathan, get on that. Like, hit that thing with a stick, like the old man in The Simpsons, hitting the Scantron machine. Like, poke that thing with a stick and get it running because we need new numbers.
Turn it off and turn it back on again.
Uh-huh.
All right. My Only Lemonade asking, after Friday's win, the Brewers were 27-17 in interleague play, which is the second best record in MLB, despite being swept by Oakland, which that will remain one of the weirdest, bizarre things for me about this year. Should note now after the Yankee series, they're 28-18, so still very good. Only Toronto at 30-16 as of Friday night was better, but that means Milwaukee is just 51-45 versus the National League. Can we read anything into this? My fear is that NL teams have learned to exploit certain weaknesses. I guess, Paul, is this just weird random AL crap, or what do you think?
This is just random nonsense. That's what it is. It is nobody's figured anybody out, especially on that scale, and especially the way the schedule works out now. Like, if you want to make an argument that like the central teams have a good understanding of each other and sort of how to, and they do a little bit. Like people, early in the season were bringing their lefties to start and changing their rotation to go bring lefties against the Brewers when they couldn't hit lefties at all. Like that's a thing that happened there. But like teams change. And there's only so much you can do to exploit everybody's weaknesses. And everybody's got scouting departments to tell you all this. Like everybody's on pretty even footing here. It's just randomness. And it's not even that significant, honestly. Like it's just noise. It's not a big deal.
100%. Let's move right along.
Yep.
All right. Brad Westness asking another check-in on potential playoff matchups here, asking, would you rather see the Brewers face the Phillies, Cubs, or Diamondbacks in a Milwaukee hosted best of 3 wild card series? Paul, I feel like we did this a couple weeks ago, but has the calculus changed at all?
Nope. My calculus is still the same. I want the Phillies, and when we played the Phillies, you saw why. The Phillies Philly against us. Things go under. They have beaten us in the past, but the Phillies are they're a snake-bitten team in their own right. They tend to screw themselves up with regularity, and they did last time we played them. They're not bad. They're okay, but they're the least scary of those. I don't like playing the Diamondbacks. I think the Diamondbacks are pretty good, and I don't want the Cubs for both aesthetic reasons and because I think they're pretty dangerous. So give me the Phillies all day.
Yeah, the one thing about the Phillies that does scare me is if they are slugging, you can get yourself into trouble pretty quickly there. And the Brewers do have some pitchers who, when your ace is Corbin Burns, and the downside of Corbin Burns is that when he gives up home runs, like they can come in bunches and he can have some issues that way. And Freddie can also have some home run issues in his own right, not as profound as Burns, but like that can also be an issue. He also can just walk people, and the Phillies lineup is good at doing that as well. So I don't know though. Like none of these teams actually strike me as like teams I really want to face, because we were 2-4 against Arizona this year. I shouldn't put that much weight on that, but something about Zach Gallen just scares the bejesus out of me. And like,
yeah, it's a bad matchup for him.
Yeah, like that one in particular. He, I
don't want Steele either. Like, same token.
There is that too. So yeah, like the Justin Steele thing, and just obviously the aesthetic thing about the fact that there will be Cubs fans all over, especially in that if we end up playing the Cubs in the 3-game series at Milwaukee, and it's just going to be Cubs fans, and just the fact that, and the thing is, if it was reversed, if we were at Wrigley Field, there would be a bunch of Brewer fans there too. Like there's plenty of Brewer fans in the city of Chicago and in the area who would go to those games, but it will just be, the narrative will be, oh, it's full of Cubs fans, and you'll just have to hear that, and I just hate that. It's terrible. So I really don't like any of those possibilities. Can it be the Reds? Like, I know they're kind of like they're
like a game and a half or 2 out at this point. They're really falling off.
Yeah, baseball gods, if you're listening, I'd really like to play the Reds again, because we really did have their number this season. Though again, that doesn't mean anything either. So all of these things are just when you look at any small sample like that within a baseball season, all of it is basically just noise. So yeah. Mostly I want to have 3 games at home, or I want that first series to be at home, because I'd like to go to those games. That would be great.
Absolutely.
All right, let's move on to the man on the milk carton, Brian Anderson. Hasn't been seen in about 3 weeks now. Dave Penshorn and Jay Google among the patrons that have questions. We also got a question from Cody Carlson on Twitter about this just really weird situation where he hasn't appeared in a game for so long, even in blowouts, despite the fact that Andrew Monasterio's defense at third base, not that great either. So he hasn't even come in as a defensive replacement. So we're all kind of scratching our heads about what's going on. Dave, his question here: what's going on with Brian Anderson? Is there a stick measuring contest between Craig Counsell and the front office? Anderson is out here playing less than Wei Chung Wong, who is just being stashed. Jay Google asking who's to blame for the Anderson situation: Craig, Mark A, Matt Arnold. And then Cody Carlson's question on Twitter: saw Ryan's thread theorizing about a possible power struggle between Craig Counsell and Matt Arnold, which sounds very plausible. Just wondering if you guys have any other theories, or have you seen any regarding Anderson's zero play for nearly 3 weeks? I don't recall a roster situation like this before. So, Ryan, let's start with you. For those who didn't see on Twitter what your theory is, can you kind of run through that?
Yeah, so basically I said the fact that he hasn't played now, and I think it's 19 days at this point. August 22nd is the last time he got into a game in any way, shape, or form. He hasn't played an inning in the field, hasn't gotten a plate appearance in that entire time. This would be weird for any team, but it screams under Craig Counsell, because he doesn't do this. Craig Counsell plays everybody, sometimes almost to a fault. Like, he is getting guys in games all the time, even if he has to like put them in weird positions and do other things. He just gets guys into games. And so this is extremely, extremely bizarre. We talked about it a little bit last week and kind of noted, yeah, this is getting pretty weird. This week especially, and it came up, and the reason Kurt Hogue went and talked to Craig Counsell about this, after the Brewers were up 7-0 with Brandon Woodruff absolutely shutting down the Pirates on Tuesday night, and Brian Anderson didn't get in to replace Monasterio defensively, didn't get a pinch hit appearance, in a game where absolutely this is where guys keep fresh appearances, right? Like you bring in your bench and have them play because you want to keep guys fresh and you want to keep them on their toes. So if a guy hasn't played in a while, they tend to play in blowouts like this. And even that wasn't enough to get him in the game. It just felt like somebody is sending somebody a message, and I don't know how to read it other than Craig Counsell is sending a message to Matt Arnold and the front office that he's just not going to use Brian Anderson basically no matter what. And so that opens up a whole host of questions. Well, why would he be doing that? That doesn't make much sense. And what possible, what is he hoping to accomplish by it? It just doesn't make any sense from that perspective. It seems like it would be detrimental to Anderson, who Kurt noted in his article that was trying to be the good soldier, but also expressed some frustration that like this is a tough situation that he's in. And so you were just left kind of with more questions than answers in this whole situation, going, why is this happening? And what does it say about the relationship of the front office to the field management staff that this is happening? And I honestly, I talked this over with Steve for like a half hour yesterday at Oktoberfest, and we couldn't come up with a viable explanation other than these two groups of people headed by Craig Counsell and Matt Arnold are not seeing eye to eye. I just don't know another way to spin it to what else it could possibly be.
Yeah, this has to be a pissing match. There is not another explanation for it. Not playing Brian Anderson is detrimental. This is, first of all, Counsell is acting stupidly here. Brian Anderson does things well. He's a good defensive player. If you believe in Monasterio's bat, which has been better than Anderson's has over the course of the season, that's fine. But you have a lot of guys whose bats are better, who you then remove in certain situations, who you give days off to. Though that's just normal baseball. So I think we can correctly infer here that either Brian Anderson did something to piss off Craig Counsell, or the front office did something to piss off Craig Counsell involving Brian Anderson. Maybe they sent him a note saying, hey, play Brian Anderson more. Maybe they sent him some like matchup statistics that he didn't like. Maybe they were overbearing and trying to get him into the game, and he was asserting power back at them. But there is definitely something like it has to be the answer. There's no other answer. Counsell knows very well how defensive value works. Like this is not him not being ignorant of what value Brian Anderson can bring. And so since he's acting against his interest, it has to be personal in some way. There is no other explanation. And, and if nobody's going to talk about why, we'll probably never know. I actually wish Anderson would at this point, because it seems like any bridges that existed have long been torched in this situation, and there's not much working against you speaking forthrightly in this situation. But appreciate him taking the tone, I guess. But yeah, this is dumb. This is stupid. You shouldn't be doing this in a pennant race. They need to knock it off.
Yeah, well, first off, Anderson may not know. He may just be the person stuck in the middle. This might be like the kid being fought between with two divorcing parents, where they're just so mad at each other, and like the kid is just like the football in the middle. I don't get the sense, because if Anderson had truly done something wrong that pissed off Counsell, well, then shouldn't it have also pissed off Arnold, and shouldn't that have resulted in him being off the roster? So like, yes. So that part of it too just doesn't, like, I came to that too. You get really Machiavellian in this very quickly. You turning things over, going, is this part of Craig Counsell's exit strategy for he's doing this, which is now going to have us, people like us, saying, oh, there's disagreement between the front office and Craig Counsell, which is going to then give him license to say, well, I needed to move on. It was time for me to move on. And we would all say, okay, that's why you're taking that big bag of money from the Mets in this offseason and going to manage the New York Mets, and making excuses for him because, oh, well, okay, you couldn't get along with them. I had that thought, and that's conspiratorial nonsense, but like, I don't know what else it could be, because this is just so strange. Like, it just doesn't make a lot of sense for this to be happening. And I think there is, when I got to the end of that thread, I got to the point where I was like, well, Craig Counsell can't be allowed to win this. He can't win this fight. Because if Craig Counsell basically puts himself in a position where he gets the final say over matters of disagreement between him and the front office, that's the manager running the organization. And the manager running the organization, I don't know when the last time that works, but it ain't in my lifetime where that's really been a thing that worked and was successful for an organization where the manager had so much power over the rest of the organization. Mostly it's just like, decades of Mike Scioscia nonsense in LA that I think of in that case. You can't really have a field manager be the one who's in charge and have the final say on stuff. So it always seemed like the relationship between Counsell and David Stearns was good and productive, and they saw eye to eye, and there wasn't any friction there. So is that dead? Is this now? This is Matt Arnold and Craig Counsell, and there must be something there, but exactly what we're going to read into it, I'm very curious what this means going forward. And actually, the way I began that thread was saying I have a feeling that we're going to be spending a lot of time this offseason talking about how significant this Brian Anderson thing is,
probably
in relation to Counsell, because there's definitely something deep running going on here, but exactly what it is very, very hard to say.
So he is going to win this. You do realize that, right?
Well,
he's a lame duck, and freedom is just another word for nothing left to lose. There's no way to punish him. Like, you could go really extreme and fire him, but I literally don't think he'd care. And
no, I mean, Craig Counsell will just leave. That's what I'm saying. The end game.
Well, yeah, he's definitely going to leave.
He's going to leave. Yeah,
he's a lame duck. He's not going to be the Brewer manager next year. That is 100% true. So he can do whatever he wants because you can't fire him.
Right.
You can't.
So, but what I'm saying is, like, Craig Counsell can't be allowed to win this power struggle in that, like, you would say, okay, Craig, if you want to run things this way, Mark steps in and says, yay, he doesn't want him on the roster. You need to get him off the roster. And then, Craig decides to stay long term. That isn't really a viable solution here. Like,
gotcha. Okay.
Like, that's what I meant by, like, having him, like, win this thing would be like him becoming, like, sort of the de facto last word on this stuff, and then staying. Like, I don't think that's really a viable alternative here.
I wouldn't worry about it because he is not staying.
Yeah, I think this more than anything now, it's gotten me on the I don't expect to see him back, and it sucks because he's one of the best managers in the game, and I think he's probably going to win NL Manager of the Year because I'm not sure who the better candidate is. Maybe they decide if the Snakes go on a big run and they're like, oh, Torey Lovello, you get it because your team was a big surprise and blah, 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 blah. But, like, at some point, Craig Counsell has to win Manager of the Year,
right.
Doesn't he?
Lovello's already got one.
Does he?
You're not going to get – I'm pretty sure he had one of the first times that the Diamondbacks were surprising. But, yeah, you're not going to give it to Snicker again. That's just boring. Dave Roberts, yawn. So, yeah, I feel like, especially, too, if he's headed to New York, right, the giant media conspiracy will just make sure he has one before he goes to the Mets. So then they can have that little fanfare.
Yeah, and that's a whole other angle to this, which we got to get into now, right?
Sure. Go for it. Yeah, that stuff's already starting to sneak out, whether it's John Heyman or whatever else. All those stories about how much he enjoyed working for David Stearns, and he'd clearly be Stearns' number one pick in New York, right? So they're already trying to manufacture this in a way.
Yeah, I mean, well, we've got the Jay Google question where he's like, well, whose fault is this? Who is to blame here? Is it Craig? Is it Mark? Is it Matt Arnold?
It's David Stearns' fault.
Yeah,
let's just go that route.
It's Steve Cohen's fault. Like, Steve Cohen is the guy who's controlling all the strings behind the scenes here, and getting everything that he wants. He's going to have his president of baseball operations, David Stearns. He's going to have his manager in Craig Counsell. He'll have his whole little wonderful set there, and then all of the free agency is his heart can delight in. Like, he'll have it all, and we'll see if he actually has a team that can win 90 games. I guess that's not fair. They did win, like 100 last year. So
they won a lot last year.
Yeah, they did.
To the point where I was like, oh, they don't even need David Stearns. That was dumb. Anyway, Price Trozen has one more Brian Anderson question before we move on here. We talk all about all this and how weird it is, and he just may not be long for the roster anyway, because as Price's question goes here, so is Brian Anderson a DFA candidate if management decides Josh Donaldson is ready to come up from AAA and is healthy? I mean, Paul, they haven't been using that 26th roster spot anyway, right? So
yeah, that's true. I mean, he's probably a DFA candidate because he's in some way controversial that we don't know. But that's really it. There's people you could excise before Brian Anderson who are less useful than him. But yeah, I mean, Donaldson's lurking there, and if he's not going to get played anyway, and Counsell actually does win that battle for this year at least, that's plausible. It's possible that could happen. It's not. It would not be great for a lot of reasons. It would be like, we don't know chemistry from anything. But I feel like kicking him off the team and bringing in Josh Donaldson would not be good for team chemistry. That's all I'll say on that.
Yeah, I don't know how bringing Josh Donaldson in would make chemistry better. I can put it that way. Like, I don't know how you improve things. I don't know that it's necessarily a huge concern either way. I mostly just don't want him on the team because I don't like him, and I'd rather not like have him on the team that I root for. That's mostly my thing. But there's also like in September, Josh Donaldson is hitting 176, 364, 529 in AAA, and like, okay, he has hit a couple home runs. In fact, he hit home runs on Friday and Saturday. So he has hit some home runs now. And apparently can still play defense at third base, which I still don't necessarily buy that, but apparently people say he could still play defense at third base. That it was so good when he was younger that like even though he's older and decrepit now, like he still can kind of move over there a little bit, and it's okay. But I don't know. I guess, yeah, this is if it's just a question of like, well, there's one dead spot on the roster already. I don't know. Like from a baseball standpoint, from a tactical baseball standpoint, I don't see how bringing Josh Donaldson in over a guy who isn't playing is going to hurt things anyway. Like if Brian Anderson isn't getting into games, you might as well have somebody else different in there. Yep. So that could be one way that this stupid ass staring contest ends. I don't know, but it just seems like another risk to introduce this in and make this a thing when you really don't need to. Now, the quotes we had were from Matt Arnold about didn't he call Josh Donaldson like a baseball rat or something like that?
Maybe. I missed
that
quote. Yeah,
I think there were quotes from Matt Arnold about praising Donaldson. So I think that is his end game here, is to try to like, if he's going to make a switch on the roster, it's going to be for Josh Donaldson, which who knows how Craig is going to respond to that.
Well, I was just going to say,
who knows?
Okay, we'll talk about this, and then cool, Josh Donaldson's on the roster for 2 weeks and gets 5 plate appearances, and that's all we ever hear from him. You know, like but that's who knows.
At this point, that would be 5 more than what we were projecting for for Josh Donaldson or for Brian Anderson. So like, who the hell knows? It's just, this is a really weird thing to be happening when most of the vibes around this team are so good that this is happening is really just, it's befuddling and it's annoying more than this is so annoying that this has to like pop up and screw with our positive end of season. I mean, the Brewers have been really pretty good for a considerable amount of time now. You know, Paul, their on base percentage ranking, they're up into the teens now in the league. They're up to the 18th spot in terms of on base percentage in the league. At least coming into today, they were. Like, they're actually getting on base. Now, they're still not slugging and they're still not hitting for much average. They're down in the bottom 5 for both of those, but they're getting on base. Things have gotten better. Mark Canha and Carlos Santana have been solid ads and have contributed mightily to this offense now being kind of functional. And for this to come up seemingly out of nowhere and for no good reason is just annoying more than anything.
I mean, this is the kind of thing that a lot of teams deal with their manager and their front office over the course of a decade, right? And we've, for the better part of a decade, which is about as long as Craig Counsell's been here, we haven't really had that drama to talk about. So yeah, it's dumb and annoying and feels stupid, but here we are spending 15 minutes talking about it.
Yes, children, share your toys. Or I guess that's not the right metaphor or whatever, but like get along and like, like play nice together. Damn it,
Craig, play with the toy I gave you. Anyway, yes. Jason Spitz asking here our next question. Stearns and Counsell are going to be together again next year, most likely with one of the New York teams, don't you think? Paul, we kind of covered this.
Yes. My answer is yes.
Yes. I still think it'd be hilarious for the Yankees to steal both away from the Mets because it's a very Mets thing to happen, but it doesn't seem likely anymore.
Yeah, right. David Stearns is going to the Mets, and I think Craig Counsell is following right along with him.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Along these same lines, Mark Podscarby, who has the best and worst odds of returning next season? Counsell, Burns, Woodruff, or Adames? So, Paul, I guess best odds. I guess worst odds we're assuming Counsell, but who's the best
Counsell's
odds?
The worst. Council, Burns, Woodruff, Adames coming
Yes.
back next year.
Yes.
I don't know. I think most of those guys will. I guess I'll go Woodruff, Adames, Burns
Okay.
in that order. But they're still here now. I don't think they'll make offseason moves. So I think those three will probably actually be back. That'd be my guess.
Yeah, I think Woodruff, Adames, Burns, Council is the correct order
Yep.
here. And
Yeah,
I think there's
absolutely.
a pretty big gap between both Council and Burns and
Yep.
Burns and Adames.
And Burns and everybody else. I agree with that too.
Yeah, I think Woodruff and Adames, I think, do come back next year. Burns, if I had to guess, won't be. But I still think it's quite likely if they just don't get the deal they're looking for.
Yeah.
At this point, Craig's
Run it
gone, I
back.
think.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I would not rule out the possibility that Corbin Burns, they just decide to bring him back and play out the year and try to make a run Prince Fielder style in 2011, right? Like, you've got the horses. Let's make one last run, although probably without Kirk Council. So we'll see how that goes. But I could still see that happening.
And hold on for 1 second. I want to get your temperature on this. So I'm assuming that Matt Arnold is going to hire a perfectly cromulent manager, somebody who's a solid person within the game who knows what they're doing. Somebody was suggesting at me Carlos Villanueva. I don't know if that would be a thing, or they probably would do a wider search than that or whatever. But I think that you can find somebody who's going to be a solid manager, even a good manager, and kind of count on them doing that. It's not going to be Council, though, and I think Council is like one of the very best managers in the game. And so, I mean, how freaked out are you about the idea of having to bring in a new manager? Like, how big of a fall off would you expect as like the midpoint there of like the fall off to random manager hired by Matt Arnold after this? What would you say that is likely to be?
I'll bet it's like I bet he's worth like 3 to 5 wins. He's really good, and so over replacement level. So like if you get an average bit like 2-ish 3 wins, that is what I would say it probably is. The thing that makes Council so hard to replace is they could bring in a stooge who does all of the analytics stuff they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
But that guy's not necessarily going to get buy-in from the team on it.
Right.
Council also, by virtue of being an ex-player for a really long time, is going to be good at communicating. And if you bring in a clubhouse guy, there's no guarantee that he's going to be open to all the things you send, all the notes you send from on high either. So it's hard to do, and they probably have to make a decision to some extent over what kind of guy they want. And I think they'll take a hit. I think he is the best manager in baseball, and finding a replacement's very difficult. So I think it's like a 2 to 3 win thing for them, like average on average, and it could be like even worse than that in certain situations if things go extremely poorly.
That's the thing. It introduces a level of uncertainty where you're like,
yeah, it does.
It could actually like things could spiral out of control and go wrong the way that like the Ollie Marmol stuff in St. Louis, where just like he would press the wrong button and then would compound the mistake and would compound the mistake and would compound the mistake again. You worry about getting into that sort of situation. But then again, it could be that might not happen. You have to wonder how much. So timing-wise, it's maybe not the worst time to have it happen because you've got a bunch of young guys on the team, and there's going to be even more young guys coming in next year who don't necessarily have like a long-term attachment built up to Craig Council. You know what I mean? So like the fact that the roster is in flux, the timing of this might be okay, but it's definitely an element of uncertainty to add in that you don't want.
All right, our next question this week comes from Michael McNamara asking, why does everyone assume that Bryce Terang's going to be at second base for his entire career? I always thought he was going to be shortstop moving forward in 24 or 25. Sub question, is Yelich back to not being back?
Well, can I take the second part first there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Go for it.
Yelich is back, and that has him back to not being back, at least for now.
All right, hold on. Let me carry the one and see.
Where
are we? What?
Yeah. So, well,
I think you're right.
Yelich's back is an issue right now. So, yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Yep.
Got it. The back is
Back.
back.
Back is back.
Yeah, the back is
Okay.
back to being an issue, and that means he is not back, at least for right now.
Welcome to Ryan Braun's oblique or whatever, or
Intercostal
/ thumb,
strain.
intercostal, whatever you want. Yes.
I mean, I will say about that, though, they absolutely should be resting him right now because
Yeah. they don't
things
need
are going well, and there's no reason. Like, when you've got playoff odds up in the 99 range, yeah, you can afford to give your best hitter some time off and let him rest so that he can potentially, hopefully, get back to where he was.
Yeah.
But who knows if this has anything to do with his struggles. I mean, he was struggling significantly in the month of August as well. So, like, the struggles have been going on for a while. The power outage has, been like a month plus now. So who actually knows? He was struggling more this week, though. But they also said something in the pregame today about this on Sunday that Yelich was like, yeah, if it wasn't wet out, I maybe would have played. And that was like, okay, so I guess like slippage is the issue, and like messing up the back from slipping on the grass or whatever. Maybe that's what did it. Like running around. I don't know. Was it raining on Friday? I don't even remember. I know it was raining
It
yesterday.
pretty much rained every day. Yeah.
Okay. So maybe that was something that was going on here, but I think it just like they're protecting him and his health, and that's smart, and it's fine. We're going to need to see where things go over the next 3 weeks to be able to say like where he stands going into the playoffs.
Yep.
First part of the question, Ryan, Bryce Terang, shortstop by when?
Yes, this is an interesting one, and I had a disagreement with somebody on Twitter about it like a week ago now, and they were really adamant that he does not have the arm to be a elite shortstop. He doesn't have an elite shortstop arm. And I went and looked at the projection or the rankings on this. Everybody was giving him 55s, and that's not an elite shortstop arm. So there's a point there to be made that like it's not an elite shortstop arm. I do think his range is quite good, and he's probably a very solid shortstop. I don't worry about him like not having the arm to make most shortstop throws. I think he's fine from that perspective. But to be like Willy Adames, you need a truly big arm. So I guess like the ideal place for him defensively would probably be second base, because I think he can be like a 70 defender, perennial gold glover at second base in a way that he probably can't be at shortstop. But I also think he is a capable shortstop. So I'm not particularly like worried about him moving over there eventually. We'll see where all that ends up. But yeah, I think he probably has the capability of being a good but not great shortstop.
All right. Last couple of questions here. Made Wiley is asking, if the Brewers would have stayed in the AL, how many more World Series appearances would we have? Paul, this is always an interesting historical question for me. Not even just staying in the AL, but I know Ryan has the theory. If they were in the AL West, they would have made the playoffs a bunch more times too.
Well, I mean, that's not a theory. That's just like mathematical fact.
Yeah.
That's just math. Yeah,
that's just math.
Back in the old days, they definitely would have made the playoffs. We just know that. If is this the hypothetical? If we're in the AL Central, like in place of who, like Cleveland,
the Twins,
Detroit?
I don't know, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
If they contracted the Twins in '98, yeah,
probably make the playoffs a whole bunch more, and probably win one, maybe, hopefully. I don't know. I don't think it's probably not that big a deal. Like other than the Cardinals, it's not like we got a big juggernaut of a division over on this side of the fence, So I'm not sure it would have mattered that much. Really, it probably would have been about the same. Maybe one. I actually don't think it's that big a deal. I really don't.
Yeah, I think first off, to put a finer point on this about what we were talking about before, when the Brewers moved to accommodate the addition of the Seattle Mariners in 1975, when they moved over to the AL East, what that did was it meant that their 93 win team in 78, their 95 win team in 79, their where was it in 1987? 1987 they won 91. That would have beat the hell out of the Twins. They would have been in the playoffs all these years instead.
Yes.
92
That
they would have
mattered a
made
lot.
the playoffs.
That mattered a
really
lot.
did matter a lot for that
Yes.
era. For this era, I really don't think it would have made much of a difference, mostly because when they put up like 90-win teams in the Mark Attanasio owned era and like the Wendy Seelig era too, like the Wendy/Mark era of the Brewers, when they won like 90 games or even like mid 80s in games, they made the playoffs for the most part. You don't look at a bunch of teams in here where like if they had just been in a softer position, they would have been so much better off. I mean, I'm looking at this and like, you know, all these teams are like in the 60s, the 70s. You have in 1996, the Brewers won 80 games. That wasn't going to make the playoffs no matter what division they were in. Like they really weren't in, they weren't out of the playoffs because of being in a bad division in that era. That was the previous era. In the Bud Selig era, that came up a lot. But not in the later era with the Wendy and Mark era. So that part of it I don't think changes much at all.
Yeah, and I know you're looking at just playoff appearances because they're largely a crapshoot, especially in the wild card era. But it's also not even like they would have had an easier path to, say, a World Series in 2011 or whatever, right? Because the Josh Hamilton Rangers were pounding the hell out of the ball. Nelson Cruz, all those, you know, like 2008, the Rays were hot. The Yankees were still winning World Series at that point. Like, it's not like the AL was an easier track either, right? So,
oh no, and I mean, for a lot of this time, like the AL has had the better teams at the very top for a lot of this between the Yankees and the Red Sox, really, and that's almost, you know, just kind of it. Like they have had the better teams at the top for, you know, big swaths of this time period. So, yeah, I don't think it really changes much.
I guess, yeah, the question could be, too, if the Brewers were in the AL, are they the Twins and not having a playoff win for like 20 years because the Yankees do? Like, that's another possibility.
Yeah, I mean, like, we're talking about the great history because, so as history now stands, the Miracle Twins went on and won the World Series in 1987. Had the Brewers been in that division, we would now be, you know, celebrating World Series MVP Rob Deere and his amazing, taking the Brewers to the World Series championship in 1987 because that's how history works. So, like, it, yeah.
Exactly. Dale Swaim's, got his number hanging in the rafters. Exactly. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right. Last question this week. Morgoth 10 asking, as we draw closer to season's end, the age-old debate of soup, salad, or sandwich has been plaguing me. Is this current Brewers roster a soup, a salad, or a sandwich? Paul, what do you think?
It's a soup. All the ingredients do blend together to work pretty well. And it's effective, especially like in the curing a cold kind of way, but it's not that fulfilling. And it's still subject to getting beaten around by beefier meals. So,
no, I was just gonna say nobody really wants soup, right? Like, who among us is sitting here going like, oh, I know what I want for dinner tonight. Just soup.
Soup is something that you're excited when you remember it's part of the supper club experience.
Sure.
But you never think of it before or after that. And that's it.
Yeah, so I'm going to say it's a salad. And I'm going to go with that because this is potentially quite good for us. Like this team this team could end up doing something in the playoffs because there's some good things to this team. There are some fine ingredients in the salad. Okay, there are some real good pieces here, and they've added a bunch of different things. Like there's a lot of stuff in the salad too. Like we've had a lot of different players on this team this year, and we just toss a little of this and a little of that, and you got a whole big like mess of stuff in there. But ultimately, it's still a salad, and it's just not like that exciting. So
you don't make friends with salad.
Yeah,
no.
Right. Yes, you don't make friends with salad. So yeah, like it's not the most like enthralling and exciting thing, even if it might be the best possible thing for us. It's still a salad.
Plus, you throw so many things in a salad, and inevitably, like one ingredient just collects at the bottom, right? And then you've got like, oh, that's where all the 5 missing Brian Anderson plate appearances went, just at the bottom of the salad bowl. So yeah, I don't know. Also, going back to the theory that everything is a salad, I guess you could argue that a 26-man roster is a salad of baseball players. So, just throw it all in the bowl and there you go. All right. That's it for Patreon questions this week. Thank you to everybody who sent one in. Reminder that patrons get question priority. Go to patreon.com/MKE tailgate to sign up there for that $2 level. You also, when you sign up to become a patron, get a shout out here on the program. And we've got a whole bunch of people now, Ryan, to say thank you to.
Yeah, you pulled these over, and so I was shocked. I couldn't believe I'd missed this during the week. Somehow I've been very busy. So, but welcome to Mitchell Reichert, Aaron Schmitz. These names all seem very familiar, so I feel like some of these are returnees, but I'm not 100% sure. So, Donald Anderson, also welcome, and Ryan Ziegler, thank you. And then finally, the cheese to Wilson Contreras' wine.
Nice.
Thank you so much.
Very
and
nice.
You are patron number 135, which James wrote down helpfully for
I
me.
don't know.
So.
It just seems... Yeah, it seems like a nice round number. So thank you, everybody.
We're getting up there. We did make a big deal of who the 100th was, so I think we could do that for 150 here. So if you wanna do that and get an extra special shout out where we're like, we're pretty sure you're 150, but then it always changes too. It bounces around because people come and people go, and the way things go. I'll also get a shout out Jay Google for re-signing up. I think his credit card must have expired.
Yep,
so
I think so.
Okay.
So it's like, oh, you're
Also.
Jay Google is now back. So hey, Jay.
To all of you who joined to ask football questions, Jay told me in the comments to make sure to check the Discord this week, which I never do.
Oh.
And I appreciate all you new people, because if we get enough patron questions, I don't have to check the Discord because we won't have time to answer any of them. So I appreciate all of you a ton. You saved me a lot of time and having to relearn how to log into the Discord. So thanks all.
And the Discord questions kind of are off the beaten path.
They're good. They're avant-garde. They're not bad. They're fun.
I like the
They think outside
avant-garde
the box.
description. That's great.
Yeah. No, it's all good. It's all
free
good.
jazz.
All right. So thanks to all of you who signed up. Again, patreon.com/MKE tailgate is the address there. $2 a month gets you the question priority. $5 gets you that plus the additional podcasts every week. So that'll do it for this week. Thanks again, everybody, for listening in. Hopefully the Brewers can kind of continue trotting along here and keep the Cubs at bay. But whatever happens in the upcoming week, we will be back here to talk about it next time. Have a good one, everybody, and we'll see you then.